I was just thinking about how a lot of ideas, or Buddhist beliefs, no, beliefs is definitely not the right word for it, kind of observations about the world. Yeah, observations is more in the direction. They often can seem quite complicated or counterintuitive to a lot of people, but actually they're incredibly, incredibly simple. For example, oneness. This idea that people find so difficult to get their heads around. I suppose I was kind of amongst that number. The idea that, like, things are not separate. I am not separate from everything else. I mean, this is just something that's just blatantly obvious, because I'm breathing in and air out of me. That air is becoming part of me. I eat food, that becomes part of me. My body fat, is that me? Yeah. When I take a shit, just the shit goes out into the world. Like, is that shit ever part of me? You know what I mean? So there's no enduring me that you can point to middle of this. I mean, is there consciousness even aware of control? But no, you're like asleep. That doesn't exist for times as well. You're not always thinking. There's no separateness of self from everything else. And in fact, actually, the more you look at the self, it is full of everything else and utterly defined by everything else. How I'm sitting now is utterly defined by everything around me and that's come before. Anyway, that's oneness. Which I just find people find so difficult to get their heads around, but it is just that simple. That doesn't say that everything is one, it's just to say, I mean to say that everything is not separate. And then the other one is time. You say that, oh, time doesn't exist. And people are like, what? And I was like, I remember when I heard this, I was like, what do you mean it doesn't exist? But time is what? But like, time isn't, you can't point to it, you can't touch it. It's just it's an idea. We are able to produce clocks or whatever that can do things at it can repeat things at various intervals, but time isn't a real thing. It's kind of obvious. I mean, because the only, and the link to that is the idea that the present, the past and the future aren't real. The only real thing is now. Which is, again, obviously, it's very obvious. It's like, well, there is only ever now, reality. The past and the future are just ideas. They happened, sure, they happened and will happen, respectively. But it doesn't make them real now. No one, karma. It just means nothing more than that actions have consequences. I knock on the door. Someone answers the door. That's it. I think people try to make Buddhism out to be way more complicated than it needs to be. It basically just comes down to spotting the difference between just seeing just like very, very simple observations about the world, that in some ways a child can make. In some ways, because they are so simple, we're like, we're our mind's almost addicted to complexity. We want to make them more complicated than that, but it's really that simple. I say, as if the one who knows, it is that simple. Sorry for being insufferable know-it-all. Good night.